So moving right along, we have next coffee chat with somebody from a company you might be familiar with called Twitter. And the interviewer is Min from Tech in Asia. Min, please come on up. And Min's going to be interviewing Aliza Knox, and she was key in helping Google set up their presence here, work closely with the EDB to get them going here in the Lion City. And now she is a senior executive at Twitter, and Min is going to be putting her on the hot seat. Aliza Knox, everybody. Thank you very much.
All right. Hello. So I'm Min, and hello, Aliza. Thank you so much for talking with us. To get started, I wanted to kind of get everybody to get to know who you are. And I understand that you used to work for Google.
I did. Well, didn't you hear the last speaker? I'm the person who poaches your employees for some astronomical sum every few months. Which, okay, good. Well, I'd be, okay, well, here I am. So let me know afterwards. Yeah, so I'm actually I spent a long time at the Boston Consulting Group and doing financial services, and about 7 years ago, I thought it would be fun to do something else, and wanted to try to get into the online world. Wasn't sure how, and ended up having a meeting of the mind with Google. I was in San Francisco at the time, but I had lived in Singapore before, and I'm obviously originally American, but I had lived in Australia and Singapore for most of my adult life. So got an opportunity to come back here and head up the, at that time, very nascent small and medium-sized business focus, advertising focus for Google, and did that for about 4 years and spent a year on mobile wallet at Google, and then have joined Twitter at the very end of last year. So I've gone from being a Googler to being a tweep.
All right. And so why did you move to Twitter? Are we going to see Twitter Glass anytime soon? Or?
Well, I moved to Twitter because I have now, it's like a stepping stone, become an ornithologist or whatever it is. You know, you can learn every bird. Everything at Twitter is about birds. So we don't have quarterly goals, we have goals. And when you join the team, you don't join the team, you join the flock. So now I'm learning more about birds than I ever thought possible. Look, I joined Google. It's a fantastic company, so is Twitter. I'm personally not an entrepreneur like our first speaker, who's obviously terribly clever, but I do like being a part of the buildup of companies that are going international. And I've spent most of my life helping companies that were from somewhere else getting bigger in Asia. That's what I like to do. And the opportunity came up, and I took it.
So Twitter is getting bigger in Asia. So you're
Twitter is getting bigger in Asia.
You're one of the, I'm not clear, you're one of the only employees outside of Japan and
right.
America.
We have an office in Japan. We just opened an office in Korea. And the office in Singapore is currently in my apartment. So it's not officially here, but we have growth plans, and we will be, obviously, we're quite well used in Asia. I'm sure you're going to ask me this, so I'll tell you that about 70% of our users are outside the US, and about a quarter of our users are in Asia already.
25% in Asia.
Around that. So we want to be here. We want to be on the ground here, and it's just, we have plans to go global, but we're actually still quite a small company, and so we need, we're trying to build up resources to do that.
And so how many users total are in Asia?
Well, our stated figure globally is 200 million for users.
For Asia is 200 million?
No, globally, for global users.
For global users.
Total monthly active users.
So then 25% of that would be...
I don't know if people here can do math, but... So we don't state a number, and they're both just approximate. So I'll leave you with that.
All right. And what are the more popular countries in Asia for Twitter?
The more populated countries in Asia?
More popular countries. Oh, I guess Indonesia is 6th in the world, right?
So I would say, again, we don't publish statistics on this, but Japan is very large. And then I think there are some statistics on the Philippines and Indonesia, which have, I think, as countries gone very heavily into social media. And one of the interesting things about our platform is that it's SMS-based, which I'm sure you all know. The reason for the 140-character limit is that SMS was 160 character, and then we had to leave space for people with long names. My Twitter handle only takes 10 characters, but some of you with longer names might need 20. So that was where the number came from. But it works very well on a WAP, SMS, feature phone kind of platform. And so countries, it's been a very good way for people to follow what they're interested in, to bring people closer in environments that not only use smartphones, but ones that still use feature phones.
And so in terms of Southeast Asia and Asia, do you see Twitter being used differently than in other regions in the world?
No, I think, to be honest, it's probably used very similarly. I mean, there's a couple, at a higher level, basically, we talk about Twitter bringing you closer, about Twitter being kind of a town hall, which I'm afraid is a rather American expression. But if you think about it, in most places that people lived over a long period of time, there was a town market or a town village where everybody went at some point during the day and kind of shared things, got the news, talked about what was going on. And that's our sort of visual image of Twitter, and I see that happening here. It's also become a lifeline, so I think people are very familiar with the tsunami and earthquake in Japan, with the recent, not so recent, but the flooding in Bangkok. People tend to use Twitter very much as a lifeline, as a way to find people in time of crisis, to share information, to organize rescue or getting help out. And I see that very similarly here. I think the two things that are sort of slightly different, but very slight, and one is not Southeast Asia, but Asia general. One is the extensive use of Twitter on non-smartphones, if you will, still here. And the other is that we have this interesting thing that in places like Japan that are character-based, the 140-character limit is just a little different, right? Because they can actually say more in 140 characters than people with Roman languages.
And so what will be the strategy going forward in Twitter, in Asia? And
so
what's the secret sauce
for
the success of Twitter?
We don't officially discuss our forward-looking strategy, nor would we ever reveal the secret sauce, right? Doesn't Coke only have one person that knows the recipe, living? So, but we basically want to make sure that the user experience is really strong for all of our users, continue to make that solid. So we're trying to put in place things that do that in every country that we're in. And then also to be able to make it possible for businesses to connect with their customers and celebrities to connect with their followers and countries, officials to be able to connect with their populations by using Twitter. So you'll see that a pretty similar global approach.
So then that kind of brings me into my next thing is how do you guys work with startups in promotion and getting it out?
So we have that one slide, but let's not put it up yet. I think the biggest advice I could give you as small companies, for those of you who are still small, is to use Twitter organically first. I mean, for me personally, ultimately I have a revenue target, and obviously the way we fund our business and the way we are able to deliver what we can deliver about bringing people closer together and having good user experience is ultimately to monetize, and we do that by selling our fire hose to a few partners and primarily by selling ads. However, I think as a business, I don't want to be up here to pitch ads. I will explain how we work in a minute. But the most important thing I see is for businesses to learn to use Twitter organically. It's a great way to engage with your customers. And you will start finding some customers naturally. And when you find those customers who come to you, who engage with you, and they're doing it because of interest, right? I mean, one of the great things about Twitter is it's an interest graph. It's not a social graph. It's not who your friends are. It's not a search function, although you can do it, but it's an interest graph. So things that Twitter knows about me, not me personally, are, I like a laugh once a day or something, so I follow Stephen Fry in the UK and Robin Williams in the US. I like up-to-the-minute news, so I follow BBC and the New York Times. I'm quite interested in social justice, and I follow a few sites and columnists like Nick Kristof. So it knows something about me. And as a business, once you start putting your messages out there, people start following you, and we start getting a picture of obviously a very privacy, there's private, I don't know who the people are who are interested in you, but start getting profiles. And once you build that, you're able to find more of them. When you start to advertise, if you ever do, or to encourage people to retweet, you are able to kind of amplify your message to other people who are interested in what you have to offer. And it's very powerful. But you need to get used to it. You need to have a Twitter handle. You need to have an authentic voice. You should probably use the same person to tweet all the time, or at least one or two people. They need to feel like it's a real you, which with the startup is probably pretty easy. I think for some of the large companies, they get very challenged about having a PR person do it or something official. They kind of need the feeling of the company. And you might want to think about a cadence. Your followers, the people you're engaging with, should kind of get used to what to expect from you. Is it once a day, twice a day? You don't want to overburden them. Is it, do you do like insights on Mondays, or a rehash of what happened over the weekend, and Tuesday is a deal, and Wednesday is a famous quote that you like, and Thursday you're giving the handle to a customer, something like that. You need to kind of build a rhythm. And it's a really good way for you to find people for free, basically, as a startup.
So can you talk more about what is the real you? What is that?
So I didn't bring examples because I don't know how Darius got over this, but the rest of us weren't allowed slides. So, there's some pretty funny examples of, I don't know, there's a great one of O2 in the UK with a guy talking in very funny slang and them answering back that way, just as you would with a friend. So I think what it means is not kind of stilted PR messaging, but literally how would you respond? What are you saying? Like Redmart's a good example. They tweet. You talked about them, right? The shopping platform. They just talk about what they're selling today or whatever, and they're kind of talking the way they would talk if they were an audience, talking to an audience here. They don't really, it's not a kind of extremely slick campaign where they're controlling the messaging.
Right.
And actually that works really well. So again, I think that's great for startups because there probably aren't a million people sitting around doing your PR, and you can just talk the way you would talk to people that you want to engage with about your brand or your platform or your company.
So you think it's okay to tweet like when I'm eating for lunch?
No, so I don't think, I think it's okay to tweet whatever you want, but I suppose if you want to engage with people, you need to think about what they might be interested in. So I know that nobody's interested in what I have for breakfast. If there's a good crowd, Tech in Asia crowd who's interested in what you had for breakfast, you could tweet that.
Might be.
So I think the other thing, just for Twitter, and this is less for businesses, but you shouldn't necessarily expect to hear back from everybody. They may follow you. 40% of people on Twitter don't tweet. They just consume. They just follow things. They just are interested. So the fact that you're not hearing back from some of them doesn't mean they're not engaged. It just means that what they want to do is listen. And that's a good thing for you to be doing too as businesses, is listening to, you should find people to follow in your industry. Or maybe if you're filling some of those gaps that Darius referred to, being a business that exists in the US but doesn't exist here yet, maybe you want to be listening on Twitter to what other people are saying about those businesses so you can learn and think about how to adapt it here.
That's kind of interesting. I always wondered myself, is Twitter a technology company or a media company? I guess I was wondering, what's your view of that? Because if you have 40% of the people are just watching, so it's kind of like television. Or listening, reading. So it's kind of like TV in a way.
Well, so we consider ourselves a technology company in the media space, but there are lots of companies in different areas like this. I'm not sure we want to be completely defined. Our goal is really to be this kind of town hall for the world, to be the place where the conversation happens and where you can participate. And so a lot of people do participate, but I'm just saying I think it's okay not to participate all the time and not to feel that you have to participate. Okay. So I'd say it's more engaged. I mean, there's this kind of interesting thing that probably most of you have seen, but there's a lot of screenshots now taken, or photos taken, of the 4-screen living room, where you see, say, a family sitting around looking at a monitor, which might be live TV or might be something else. and somebody's using a phone, somebody's using a laptop, somebody's using a tablet, and they're all engaging with media and different things in different ways. So some people might be, let's say it's live TV, particularly in the US right now, people might be tweeting, or particularly sports in Europe. And I know Singapore has a lot of big, English soccer fans. So there's an Arsenal game on, and people are actually tweeting in response to things on TV, or tweeting each other about what they see. But there's this kind of multi-layer interaction where people are consuming on some devices and engaging on others. And so I think you can't separate it as much as you might have been able to in the past.
Oh, cool. Do you want to put up the slide, any chance?
Sure. I just want to ask, just because it is morning and we've been promised a caffeine boost, but then we turned off the lights for you. So I want to ask a question. Does anybody know? Oh, I'm not. Okay. Does anybody know? You know what? It's very uncommon that people say I'm not loud enough. Does anybody know how long it took Twitter to get to our first 1 billion tweets? Has anybody been to a Twitter lecture? This is useless cocktail party conversation for you to throw out there. 3 years, 2 months, 1 day. Does anybody know how often we get 1 billion tweets now? How long it takes now? That's good. You need to be in our strategic planning. Not quite. Yeah, he's good. That's our strategic plan. 2.5 days. So it's really quite amazing, the growth. But I like the 1 hour answer. We'll talk afterwards. And tweet some more. Just keep tweeting. Okay, so I just wanted to, I really don't want this to be a pitch for selling ads on Twitter. I mean, I'm happy to talk to you guys about it if you want to, but I was asked to kind of explain how it works and what we're doing here besides, stealing your disloyal staff for heaps of money and shares. So, I wish. Anyway, so I've got this screenshot up here, and so this is what your desktop looks like, or should be what your desktop looks like when you open up Twitter. Can I just get a show of hands here? How many people actually have a Twitter handle? That's great. And for those of you who didn't put up your hands, can you see me afterwards? After the guy who's getting me to 1 billion tweets an hour. So if you don't have one, I'd encourage you to just go poke around and explore. It's a pretty cool tool and a great way to kind of hear what's going on, particularly amongst a crowd like this. So what you have in the upper left, the one that says Twitter Design, is just your handle and some things about you, how often you tweet. What's underneath it on the top left is called Who to Follow. Okay? And so in Who to Follow, we suggest for you, based on what we're seeing you follow, other people you might want to follow. So, for example, in this crowd, you probably know, I follow TechCrunch in the US and Wired. I follow TechCrunch and Wired. So it might come up, they might suggest, hey, do you want to follow Darius, or do you want to follow Walt Mossberg? Here are people involved in the tech scene in places where you live. What do you think about them? Now, what companies can do, or individuals, I know quite a few individuals, bloggers in particular, who've used this at Twitter, they'll pay for a promoted account. So what you're seeing behind me, that little yellow box with an arrow up there, Singtel above Dick Costello, who's our CEO, Singtel is, and they were our launch partner in Singapore. So I didn't talk about this. I'll come back to it in a minute, or you can ask me what we're doing in Singapore, and then I'll answer. But right. So Singtel has paid for a promoted account there. So they're trying to find people who might be interested in following them. And they have a variety of ways to pick. They can pick by demographics. They can pick by gender. They can pick by time of day. But the most powerful thing we see people using is, can you find people like the people who are already engaged with me? Or they can define some other interest profiles. We have like 25 categories, 325 subcategories of kinds of interest graph that you can look at, like young people who like politics, or old people who play badminton, or Americans living in Singapore who like to come to conferences and talk too much. Whatever it is, you can find them and try to promote to them. That is an auction-based account, so similar to things you'd be familiar with from other companies. You select with a group in mind, but you only pay if the person clicks to follow. So otherwise, it's just a free impression. I see Singtel, I know they're trying to get my attention. I don't want to follow them. They're a big telco. What am I doing? Or I do want to follow them. They're my client. They're fantastic. I want better customer service, so I follow them. But they only pay if I choose to follow. Bottom left is trends. So that trend setting right now can be set by geo or can be set by targeted to you. The only thing you can buy is the top space. That's only purchasable for a day. It's a rate card. It's not auction. Tends to be big launch announcements and things like that. If you look, you'll see, for example, Nike uses it a lot. Singtel's using it in this example. If you pay no matter what, whether I click on it or not. If I do click on it, I will also see my top tweet in the tweet stream is from you, from Singtel. Right side is basic tweets, where you see tweets from the people you're following. So in this case, for example, the second guy, Kevin Weil, is a product engineer at Twitter. But the top one here is just a representation that Singtel picked that I was the kind of person they wanted to target, and I'm seeing them on my tweet stream. I would be very unlikely to actually see a screen like this where I see 3 different promoted things from Singtel. So that I don't think you'd ever see a screen like that. We throttle the amount of promotions that anybody sees in a day because it's very important to us that Twitter remains the conversation of what's going on in the world and not a spammy, ad platform. So you rarely see 3 at a time, and I've never seen a case where you'd really see 3 from one advertiser like this at a time. But that's what the products are, and you can buy all 3 or 1 or none and just use Twitter organically.
All right, great, thanks. So what are you doing in Singapore?
So Twitter in Singapore, what we've done here, we launched in late January with Comly Media. They're our representative on the ground here until we can build an office. So if anybody needs someone there, you can look up Matt Sutton, S-U-T-T-O-N, at Comly, or you can follow me. My Twitter handle is at Aliza Knox. I don't tweet very much, but I tweet some, and you can certainly find me there. But I do a lot of consuming on Twitter. And they're the ones who are actually selling for us in 5 countries in Southeast Asia, which are Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, the Philippines, and here in Singapore. And we do have customers, and we do have sales, and we're up and running, but it's very early days. And other countries will come later.
So how early? Just last year, or?
No, we launched at the very end of January.
Okay. Oh,
so it's, what is it? It's not quite 2 months. Oh, yeah, it's 2 months and a couple days.
Okay.
So very early days. Singtel has had quite a bit of success. They're very happy. They're out blogging about it and talking about it. There are a few others up and running, but it's very early.
Okay. And I guess my last question: how can startups in Asia work with you? Like, how can they contact you, et cetera, et cetera?
So, you can find me on Twitter, as I said.
Right.
And I think if you want to advertise right away, you can get a hold of Comly Media. But what I would suggest for anybody who's interested is that you go to business.twitter.com, and that gives you lots of insights into how to advertise or how to think about being on Twitter before you advertise. Give you a lot of insights without having to call an ad agency if you're not ready to spend and don't want somebody selling to you. And then there's a help center link to that and a lot of other things. So personally, I find that very useful just to look up ideas as I'm talking to clients. So again, I think it's fantastic that you guys are here. I love the startup world. I've done a little bit of angel investing. Sequoia's invested in us. I was out at their building yesterday. I've been out at the hub talking to social entrepreneurs. I think it's getting up ahead of steam here. I think, like Darius, that there's more that can happen in Singapore. There's a lot of potential. And we're happy to be here just as a platform for you to communicate and engage with potential customers. And I think you can use us in that way before you get to anything that is financial. And then if you want to get to that point and you're finding it's useful organically to amplify your message and you want to spend some money to do it more, that's great. You can do it through Comly. And ultimately, I think we'll have an office here where there are other tweets on the ground. And so stay posted. But you can follow us. There's lots of Twitter handles you can follow. Twitter Business, Twitter Blogs. Find those, follow those, and you'll find out what's going on here. So, thank you. For those of you who are on Twitter, thank you. And for the rest of you, you're missing some conversations, and you're missing keeping close to things that matter to you. So get on. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks a lot.